This video will cover the Sirrus family, more specifically Sirrus Mobile, because it will be used in the field to go out and do data collection for field boundaries, soil sampling, crop scouting, planting, and your chemical inputs from when you do your scouting, and then you realize and identify a problem area, whether it be weed, disease, or whatever, and then you create a chemical application to spray. So first off, I talked about field boundaries. So if I come down here to the Add button, and I don't care what level you're at, if I come up here to the menu bar, top left corner, and slide this over, I'm at the account view. But if I click in here and say, okay, I'll go to the Campbell Grower, the buttons are still the same. If I click in the view and it slides over, and click that plus or add button there, these are all the same no matter what level that you're at. Now, I'm going to start out with my actual boundary here, creating a new boundary. So I'll hit the Create Boundary button, and you have options to be able to come in here and either pick a field. That is going to be the CLU, or the Common Land Unit, that's available, if it's available in your part of the country. If you're going to drive it with GPS, you certainly would select that. If you wanted to draw it on the view, you could select that. I'm going to do the pick a field, just to demonstrate the capability of it. And I'm going to go in here, and when I pick that field, that's already an area there. I'll put that right there underneath the cursor, and you'll notice that that field boundary pulls up and shows that we've got a polygon that's already in there. So I'm going to select that one, and then I'm going to do the same thing again, go back to pick a field, and just scoot up just a little bit to this up here and hit select that polygon. And I've got even just a little bit more there. These aren't always perfect, but they can certainly get you started. So I'll select the polygon there. Now we can go in and edit those if need be. I'm not going to for the sake of demo here, but you can always edit those as well by going back to here and edit the vertex, edit the boundaries, and so forth. So I'll come up here and I'll save this boundary out, and I'll tie this to a new grower. And in my case, I'll hit the Add New Grower button, type in what I want to call this, do the same thing for the farm, add in the farm, hit Done once I've added that in, and same thing for the field. I'll just call this the NE1 for the field name, and Done, and save that. Now I've got my boundary in the system, and I've got it collected. So now once I've collected the boundary, and you may have driven it with GPS or used the tools like I just did, I'll go back to that Add button again. Now I'm going to come in here and do a planting operation on this field. So when I pull up the planting operation, you'll notice that it's highlighted here in the green, planting, and if I go to my crop drop-down list, this is my short list that you're seeing, but if I hit that plus sign, that gives me the master list of every crop known to mankind. And December 5th of 2019, you get everything. But here very quickly, somewhere in 2020, you're going to have this subdivided out in it, so by regions of the world, the Americas, Australia, South Africa, Europe, Asia, and so forth. But you would check mark the ones that you want to appear in your drop-down list. So if I pick corn, then you're going to get all the seed companies. This is my short list, but if I hit that plus sign in the right top of that view, that's the master list. And the same thing, we'll par that down with the global version coming out here in the next few months. So there's my short version, and I'll pick something out of here as far as what one of those might be. And then I'll go to the hybrid variety. This is my short list. I could hit that plus sign, and there's going to be my master list of everything what's out there in the real world. But I would pull down here and pick one of these, whichever it is that I'm going to do, and do this for whatever the crop purpose is going to be, and whatever my seeding rate might be. So maybe I'm going to put that at 32,000 on that one area, and this one area is 41.2 acres. Now I could do multi-select here. Think of that as copy and paste, because now I can come up here to this zone and this zone. All I did was tapped on that, and now I've got the same information everywhere. So if I uncheck the multi-select tool and I come up here to this part of the field, which is 16.3 acres, I'm going to say I'm going to increase that to, and in this case I made a mistake, but I'm going to increase that to 34,000 seeds per acre. And if I come back to here, I've got my mistake at 32, but I can correct that by adding on a 0. And the same way here. And this one I'm going to punch down to 30,000. Once I get everything set up in there exactly what I want, I want to make sure I have my units for each of those. And if I would have done this correctly the first time, I wouldn't have to go back and do this now. So now on each one of those zones, my 16.3 acres, my 2.7, and my 41.2, I've got everything in here regarding what I want for this recommendation. So I'll save this out. I'll set that for the event date as of today. I've created it for the 20. I'm going to do this for the 2020 season for the planting. So I'll scroll up here to the 2020, select that out of the list, and I want to save this as an actual recommendation. You also have this from and to date, and of course that's the week, but I'm going to set this out up to something that would be appropriate. So we'll probably get, so from today, from let's just say January 1 up to the to date, and we'll spread that out up until sometime in April, or let's just do May 13th. So we're going from Jan 1 to May 13th. The recommendation is available to be utilized. And you can also come in here and put up to 4,000 characters on the notes if there's anything, and that will appear on your actual reports. The save and create rec means if you want to create a recommendation for like anything to go along with that planting, like fertilizer or anything like that, chemicals you might put down with that. So I'll save this. That saves that recommendation out now for this particular field. If I hit the screen, that window goes away, and if I hit the right facing arrow, it takes me through and it shows me all the different things that I've got in there. I'll just cancel that for the time being. But now, once I do the planting, I send this out to the planter, and if I go to my activities down here in the bottom right corner, that shows me that I've got my 2020 planting now as an activity in here. Now I'll come back, and let's say the plant starts coming up, and I want to get some imagery for this field, and I'm going to enroll imagery in this particular field to use during the crop scouting part of the season. So I'm going to set my enrollment date to starting, let's say, in April the 3rd. And so from April 3rd until I tell it when to stop, well, in this case, it'll be April 3rd until I unenroll it. But I'll enroll that field, and then I'll have imagery for that particular field to be able to utilize for doing the actual scouting on that field as the crop begins to grow, shoot through the ground, and go through all the growth stages that the corn plant will. Once the imagery is downloaded to your Sirrus mobile device, you'll come in here to the Activities view, click on the imagery there in the middle tab, and this, of course, is back from 2019. But if I scroll down here and look at, you'll notice some of these are, well, all of these are Sentinel over here on the right side, and that's 10-meter imagery. If I scroll on down, I ordered it back from 331, but let's come in here to the 410 date. Here's a Sentinel image, and I'll click on that. Now here's a Landsat, and I'll show you the difference between the two. If I click on the Landsat, that's 30 meter, or 90 feet by 90 feet. And if I approve that, because there was not much cloud coverage at all there, that you'll notice the cell size. It's not as resolute or fine resolution. I'll hit the back button up in the top left and then come back here and do this on 410 using a Sentinel image, and you're going to notice the resolution is finer, it's greater. Now that's one where the actual cloud too much coverage, so I'm going to reject that. Come in here to the 15th, grab this particular image file, let it download, and there's a good clean image, cloud-free day, and I'll approve that. And we're running from a 0.18 up to a 0.66. Your red areas of the field are areas where you have stress on the crop, stress on the plant. Even though the NDVI values are starting to crawl up as far as the value themselves in relative number values, you still have a red area out here in the field where you've got crop stress. So what this will do is to help you to identify where you have those crop stress areas at, and use this to go out and pinpoint what's going on and make a recommendation, which is what we're going to do now. So I'll click the options in the top right side and collect with the image. When this pops up, I want to do a scouting there at the very top. This pops up, and because I set my scouting to point, it's set, of course, to point. Now, if I was out in the real world walking this out with GPS, I would see myself moving around there, such as you see this piece right here, my pointer. If I come right here and I drop a point, I walk to that XY location, that drops a pin there. So at that XY location, I would hit my crop drop down, and this is my short list, like what I talked about over in the planting earlier, same list for the crops. I would say, well, that's my corn. I would go to whichever of these three that I would use. I'm going to use the corn growth stage. I'll come over here to the growth stage itself. There's the master list. I would put everything in there, what's the appropriate one to use, and we'll just say it's at fifth leaf, and then fill anything else out that I might feel that is pertinent to identifying a problem there. If I come down here and identify that I've got a weed infestation, I'm going to hit the weeds button, and of course it's that same XY green point that was highlighted there we're tying data to. So if we come in here to the weeds database and we say, well, we see that we've got some mare's tail popping up around through the field, we could go through the density, and we could go through the weed stage as well and fill out anything else that might be pertinent. Now if we have a second weed, we can come over here and you can add up to 8, but I've already got one, so I'll add a second one by hitting that green button, go add a second weed and say, well, we also see that we got some pigweed issue out there at the same location. Fill anything else out that you might want to within the weeds database. If I'm there at the same spot and I notice I have an insect pressure, there's my short list, so I'll come in here and I'll pick whatever it might be for that's showing up. I can also take pictures with these cameras. I can either hit the camera button itself and take a photo, or use my iPhone photos that I currently have. I'll click the camera button, I'll take a photo of that actual insect that's showing up on the field at that area, focus that in, and then save that, or just use that photo. And now it turns to an orange camera indicating that I've got at least one image that's saved in here. You can have up to 5 per each one of these camera buttons that you see on every one of these different items. So I could add 6 more insects. In my case, I'm going to come down here and go to diseases, and at that same XY location, if I had some kind of a disease, there's all the diseases associated with corn in the world. You'd make your short list from that. When I hit done, that becomes my short list, and then you could pick out what it might be that you find as an issue. And there again, you could click on the camera button and take a picture of that, and that would save that on that report for you. When you get through with this, I'm going to come up here to the top right side, and I'm going to hit the Save button now that I've done my scouting. Now, I'm going to cancel just a second, because let's say that you walk down to another area of the field. You walk down to this XY location here. I dropped another pin right here. So we had a lot of issues up here. We walked down here to this other area that's got some kind of an issue going on. We noticed we got a lot of the same problems that we had up here. So rather than filling the database out a second time, I'm going to come up here and click on that first point. It turns green, and I'm going to do that multi-select button, and really think of that as copy and paste, and I'm going to copy and paste everything from that first database to the second one. Then I'll go over and hit the multi-select tool to deselect the first one, select the pinhead of the second one, and now I've got all that same information as far as everything what's in here, and I can make any specific detailed changes I might need to. If you ended up with a pivot on the field, you could hit that pivot tool, that blue tool that you saw me click on there to the right, hit choose one, and if it happened to be a center pivot, you could set down your end gun to where it might have been at on the field whenever you finished and set that pivot, and that will show up as an image when we hit finish here, and it will tell us that. That will save that as a photo in the scouting app. Now we've got our actual recommendation, or we've got our actual scouting done, so I'm going to hit save on this. I got my one image, as you can see. I've set my pivot, and I'll come up here and I'll say, I'll just take today's date just for sake of argument, and I want to save this as an actual application because I've done it, but I also want to hit the save and create rec because I want to create a crop protection and fertilizer recommendation on this field. So I'll hit the save button. That's going to save out the scouting and pull up the information now what I need to go into for the actual. Once the scouting is saved, it will immediately go into the product recommendation for what it is for the crop protection and fertilizer database. So in this case, if I had any tank mixes or recents, I could go to my recents and it would show me what I recently had on other fields. And just to show you here, I've already built this with some herbicide and some 2 herbicides, insecticide, and fungicide, and water's my carrier. I could load that into the view, and now I've got all that information already pre-populated. If I didn't, I'd have to build these one time, save that, and then that becomes an actual tank mix that I can use from here on out. So now I've got that assigned to that polygon in the field, but I need to assign it to here and to here as well, so that I've got all my 60.2 acres on this entire field now set up to use for this particular recommendation. If I come up here on this area and identified I didn't have any problem there, then I could go in here and specifically change the rates and everything if I needed to on that area. Once I would get through, I would come up here to the Save button to save this recommendation out now. And of course it's going to be saved as a recommendation, and I'm leaving it to a 5-day window, and of course that's not appropriate, but you would set it to a 5-day window or whatever the case might be. You can add up to 4,000 different characters on the notes here, and we'll save this out. And that creates our recommendation now that we could go through here, and it's going to show us everything what's different in the database itself. At some point in the year, once you get through with the crop, doing the scouting, you get your actual yield in and everything, then you'll upload the yield, and more about that a little bit later on in another video on Online Summit. But now that I'm still going through the latter part, let's say the corn was taken off, we're in September, October, November of the year, I'm going to come up here, and in this field view, I'm going to hit the plus sign down here, and I'm ready to do some soil sampling. So I'm going to show this example using a grid option, soil sampling by grid, and I want to select all 3 of those polygons in the bottom right corner. Then I would hit grid, and this is going to default to a 2.5 acre grid. Now you can change that up down there on the cell size, the rotation. I could come in here and hold my finger on this and scooch this around to wherever I want to get the best fit. I could come up here and nail this thing and get it laid in there as the best that I can. Once I get everything set up exactly like what I want, I'll hit set grid there in the bottom right corner. That sets my centroids to each one of the centroids of those 2.5 acre grids. You'll notice some of these are messing, but if you do want some in here, now's the time to drop them. So all I'm doing is just holding my finger down and then pulling that in there and pulling it over a little bit so it's not right there near the waterway. And over on this side, I'm going to scoot these over just a little bit on this east side of the field, just so they're out in the field just a little bit. Once I get everything set up exactly like what I want to, I'm going to create a navigation route. So I'll start outside the field and I'll start pulling my finger through, connecting the dots, if you will, on how I want it to navigate me around this field as I'm pulling the actual samples themselves. Now the sensitivity on some iPads are a little bit different than others. You may have to push down a little harder, a little less, a little softer. But once you get your route set up, hit Set Route in the top right corner. That's going to then show you that you've got everything set up and you're so many feet. In this case, I'm a little over 1,000,000 feet from that number 1 point. My depth I'm going to pull here is going to be a 6-inch core. So I would set all of that up in the database so I don't have to enter it again. And now I'm going to hit my drop point tool. And it's going to take me to point 2. Those concentric circles you see are 30, 20, and 10 foot away from the centroid of that 2.5 acre grid. So as you're running on a four-wheeler, you're going to see when you get pretty close to those areas and where you're at. I'm doing it here off the centroid, but if I was in the field doing this using actual GPS, it's going to drop it wherever my GPS point is when I'm standing there with that. But it's just navigating me right now. So it's a pretty quick and easy way if you know your field fairly well and you know what you want to get as far as achievement goes on your soil test samples. When you get your samples done, you're going to hit the Finish button in the top right corner. And I just teach people to abbreviate here, SSPTS, and this is my fall, so I'm just going to abbreviate fall of 2019 because it makes it easy to read that in the header name. And I would put the date and everything, and we actually did this today, so this is going to be an application, and we would save that out. And now the application is done for the actual soil sample. I'm going to come back here in the top left and hit the back button and go down here to the plus sign again, or the add button, because one of the things I want to do is I want to run a report for those soil samples. So I'll hit reports down in the bottom right. When this pops up, I'm going to pick that very top report, the barcode report, because I want to print off. I'll fill out everything, what's the information I need for this particular lab, my name, whatever we might want in there, but fill all the pertinent information out and then hit, and you're going to select your activities. I've only got one here, but if you had multiples, it would show you that year. And again, SSPTS fall 2019, I can identify that pretty quickly. So I hit select and it runs the barcode report now for my lab, and I would need to print a hard copy of this off. And most labs I've ever been in have taught me to teach everybody, the users of our technology, to create 2 hard copy reports to put in the box or the bag per field, not per sample, but per field. So once the lab would get this, they're either going to use the QR scan in the top left or the barcode in the top right. And once they scan that, that gives them the information they need on their side. Once the analysis is done, then that's going to be synchronized back to your AgX account, and this will automatically synchronize down here in the bottom right. And if it's not, you can hit that sync. And at some point in time in the near future, your soil samples are going to be pulled down to your actual Sirrus account or your Summit AgX account.